What's going on, guys? Tim Bratz here. Hey, we've gotten a lot of good comments on the videos that we did answering your questions on social media and stuff. And so we've gotten several other comments on these YouTube videos, and we've compiled them. And we thought, let's go do another video. So in this one, I'm going to answer all your guys' questions that you've brought me to date. And if you have more questions, put them in the comments section, and I will answer those in future videos. Let's rock and roll. All right, so the first question comes from someone who has a full-time job and they've been a limited partner in some projects. Hey, I'm a limited partner on a few properties and would like to find some properties to bring to the table on myself to take them down myself. Just wanted to ask, when I talk with commercial brokers and I tell them I'm new to this and I've only invested money indoors, but this year I want to find my own deals, do you think that's a good approach? I like honesty, but would someone take a chance and show me properties if they know I've never bought anything myself? Then he goes on to say some nice accolades. Thank you for your content that you put out there. Hope one time my work schedule agrees with one of your live events so I can join. Would love to have you. So let's talk about that. As a limited partner in a deal, if you just write a check, you're considered a limited partner. That means you're limited in liability to really just the check that you wrote. You have zero decision-making, responsibility, and power at the same time. You're not voting or taking a vote on how operations are run or managing member or anything like that. There's a general partner that handles that side of things. But as a limited partner, you're bringing money to the deal. And how is that viewed based on going and talking to different brokers? Let's talk about it. So as a limited partner, the good news is they know you have money. So that gives you a certain level of credibility right out of the gate. So even if you never operated your own deal before, but if you go to a commercial real estate broker or residential real estate broker and you're saying, hey, I've invested passively in real estate before and I'm looking to take down my own deal, they know that you probably know how to underwrite a deal and they know that you have the cash. All they care about is getting to the closing table and you performing. So yeah, there's probably a little bit you're gonna have to overcome on that front of whether or not you can sponsor the loan or whatever that looks like. But you've already overcome some of these hurdles by letting them know that you have money, you know how to underwrite a deal, and you're passively invested in some other projects. So absolutely, why not reach out to brokers? But you could also look up, just Google search this, right? I actually have a video of the top 10 ways to find off-market direct-to-seller deals. And that way you don't even have to worry about this, right? Just go and work on a handful of those different ideas and strategies to go find off-market direct-to-seller deals. You're negotiating with the actual decision maker and the seller themselves, and now you're able to just go and overcome that right out of the gate. All right, question number 2. Can I send you a short video of my vast S&E network to see if there are any synergies? New York City, Miami based. I really don't know what that means, so just go ahead and explain to me what that is, and if there are any synergies, or we think there might be any synergies, then yeah, you can send it over to my team and we'll take a look and see if there's some ways we can make some money together. Question number 3 comes from my video talking about how we split up equity on different deals and what we think is fair or reasonable whenever we raise money, and how much the equity investors get, how much the operating partners get, who found the deal, who raised the money, who's sponsoring the loan, who's handling asset management for the next 30 years. So there's a video on how we carve that up. You guys can check that out. But one of the questions from that video came in and said, hey, very good and simple explanation. Appreciate that. When someone refers to a 70-30 split towards the money that they're paying out more for a shorter amount of time as they aren't offering the perpetuity angle that your model carries. Is that correct? So here's the thing. It can be completely different. I've seen it done in so many different ways. Sometimes there's a 70-30 split towards the investors, and that gets, there's something called a waterfall. So once they hit a certain return metric, let's say it's like after 15% return on investment, then it turns into like a 30-70 split in favor of the operating partner, or a 50-50 split after a 10% return. Like, there's so many different ways, and sometimes it turns into 100% to 0 split, and really the money just gets paid back to the investors, and they don't own any equity, for instance. So it really just kind of depends. You gotta understand and ask that question whenever you're looking at a syndication and looking at being a limited partner in any one of these deals. So make sure you're asking that question: what happens when we refinance? What happens at a sale? Are there any waterfalls where the operator gets more equity or gets certain fees or whatever that looks like? Because I've seen it done 100 different ways. So just be careful of the fees and then understand what the waterfall metrics look like with equity levels rising or falling based on where you are in the deal. All right, next question comes from the 6 steps to the value add process, right? What our business model looks like. Somebody asked, are you structuring your deals inside of a fund or a syndication or setting up an LLC and getting loans from banks and private money? The answer is kind of a combination of a couple of those. So there are open-ended funds that are, you invest in it and then they go and buy a property and then the returns from the sales and the refinances and the cash flows goes into a certain fund, and that might be spread across hundreds of doors or thousands of doors and dozens of properties. And so you're typically investing in that for a fixed return, but not always getting equity in the deal. So it's kind of, if you're chasing more of a yield of, hey, I want a 7, 8, 10, 11% return on my investment, that could be a good option for you. The way that I structure it is I syndicate capital, meaning I take multiple investors and bring them into a single deal, and I pay them based on that single deal, right? Like, so you can actually say, hey, we're gonna buy 123 Main Street, and then to kind of go into the LLC side, we create an LLC for each property that we own. So every property I own is in its own LLC. Typically the bank requires you to do that from an asset protection standpoint anyways, but it also allows you to then bring in different partners, different investors for every single deal that you do. So we'll create a new LLC, 123 Main Street, 123 Main Street LLC, and then we will go and get bank financing for, let's call it 75 or 80% of our total cost basis of that deal. So if it's a $10 million deal, we'll get $8 million from the bank, and then we'll go and syndicate or raise outside capital for the other $2 million of that deal. And so that's how we structure it. So the investors get a certain percentage of equity in the deal, and we pay them a fixed return on their investment. So depending on the deal, it could be anywhere from, we typically average around 6 or 8%. And then we try to refinance out, get them their money back in 3 to 5 years, and then hold that property forever. So if we can do that, we can build some long-term wealth. And when they get their money back, they actually maintain their equity forever. So even though all their cash is off the table, they're still getting cash flows from the property. They're still able to benefit from the depreciation on the property, and they're still getting the equity growth as we pay down principal, and as the property appreciates, their equity value increases over time. So they can get a fixed return while their money's invested and create long-term wealth for them and their family by having equity in different deals. All right, next question comes from one of the Spill the Beans episodes. Somebody asked, is $5,000 a month actually possible for someone to achieve who just wants to lend money but is not an accredited investor? So first of all, let's define accredited investor versus non-accredited investor. An accredited investor, defined by the SEC, is somebody who has a net worth of $1 million or more, excluding their primary residence. So if you take the primary residence out, second home counts, vacation home counts, capital in the stock market counts, cryptocurrency counts, equity in real estate, equity in businesses, all those other things count except for a primary residence. Cash in the bank counts. And so if you have a net worth over $1 million, you are an accredited investor. Another way that you can fit that description is if you have income over $200,000 a year as an individual, or $300,000 a year married filing jointly. And they want you to have earned that for the past couple of years with a reasonable expectation to earn that again this year. So you don't need both, but either or, if you check either of those boxes, you are an accredited investor. That just allows you to get into some different types of deals. It just kind of depends, there's certain deals that I can market only to accredited investors, and I can, take out a billboard and you say, hey, invest in my deal, but it's only for accredited investors. There's other deals where I can take on non-accredited investors, and they can invest, but that's typically like a friends and family fund. There's a different kind of a fund that you set up. You have to have a prior existing relationship, and you can take some of those monies at that time and have non-accredited investors invest in your projects. I've done dozens and dozens of both of those. So the question becomes, is $5,000 a month possible? Is that a feasible amount of money that you can earn if you're not accredited? Well, if you're not accredited, that means your net worth is less than $1 million, which means you probably have less than $1 million of cash to deploy. So we can back into these numbers. If you want $5,000 a month, how much money do you have? And then you can back into a simple equation of what return on investment do you need on that. So from a strictly passive investing angle, if you want $5,000 a month, that's $60,000 a year. $60,000 a year divided by, let's say you have $500,000. That means you need a 12% return on your investment. If you have less than that, let's say you have $250,000. So you got $60,000 is what you want to generate in passive income, and you have $250,000 to invest. Now you need a 24% return on your investment. So do you see how you could just play with the numbers and calculate that? If you don't have a bunch of cash, what's something else you could do? Maybe you know somebody with cash. Maybe you know somebody who has $500,000 that they're willing to lend you, based on your reputation, based on your personal name, or personal guarantee. And maybe you can arbitrage somebody else's capital. I've seen people do this before, where they borrow money from one person. I mean, this is what banks do. They borrow money from somebody, have it on deposit, and then they lend it out at a higher rate. It's called arbitraging capital. So let's say you have somebody who is willing to invest $500,000 with you, and they just want a 6% return on their investment. Okay, it's reasonable, it's very respectable. At the same time, that leaves some meat on the bone for you to then go and invest it in something at a higher interest rate. So what if you could take somebody else's money, $500,000 at 6%, and then deploy it at 15% return? You can arbitrage a 9% return, right? You're paying out 6, but you're earning 15. That's a 9% delta on $500,000, yields $45,000 a year in passive income on somebody else's money. Divided by 12 months, puts you at $37.50 a month in passive income. So you're not at your $5,000 yet, but you're pretty close. And it's a way that you can get to your passive income number without having to stockpile a bunch of your own cash and do it. And maybe there's a blend. You use some of your own money and you raise some capital and invest it together into different deals. So it allows you to kind of take a formula, go back to the drawing board, understand what your assets and resources are right now, and just kind of backtrack into whatever that number looks like. You can reverse engineer it based on how much money you got, the return on investment you need, and it'll get you that $5,000 a month passive income. Good luck. Next question's a good one. Hey Tim, what's the best approach to go from 0 to 1 units? That's always the hardest one, right? You're exponentially growing. You will never grow more than going from 0 to 1. My first was I house hacked. I took my own home and I bought a 3-bedroom house and couldn't sign on the loan, so I got somebody else to sign on the loan for me, my dad. And then I operated it, right? I brought some of the cash for the down payment and I did the work to it. And then I rented out the other 2 rooms in this 3-bedroom house to a couple of my buddies. They paid me $500 a month in rent. I had plus utilities, so I had about $1,100, $1,200 a month in rent. My total mortgage was like $1,300, $1,400 a month, right? And then plus I had my share of utilities. So it allowed me to own real estate that somebody else paid for. I came out of pocket. Instead of me having to go and rent an apartment somewhere and probably pay $800, $900, I was able to actually own a home instead of an apartment, get paid by my friends, and only outlay probably $300 or $400 a month in cash instead of way more for something that I rented and didn't own. So if you could go out and house hack, I'd absolutely do that. That's going to give you a level of comfortability because you need somewhere to live yourself. You could also do that with a duplex. And you can get traditional financing on that too, because you own more than 50%, or you're occupying more than 50% of the dwelling. So you can go buy a duplex, live in one side if you don't want roommates, and then just rent out the other side of the house. So that's a great way to go from 0 to 1. The other thing that I would look at is maybe try to find a seller financed deal. I like seller financing. The bank doesn't have you in the ringer and have you jumping through all these hoops and all that kind of stuff. So I got my first deal, my first rental property, seller financed. I went to the seller. They needed a certain amount of money to solve a problem that they had. but they didn't need all the money. So it was a $50,000 deal. They were willing to carry back $32,000 if I brought $18,000 down payment. I found a friend, actually got introduced to a private money lender. They loaned $25,000 on that deal. On that deal, I had $32,000 of seller financing, $25,000 of a private money lender. That's $57,000. But I bought it for only $50,000. What happened to the other $7,000? Well, after closing costs and prorations and all that kind of stuff, I walked away from that deal with $6,600 of loan proceeds, non-taxable income, non-taxable money that went in my pocket. So I walked away from a deal using none of my own money, using none of my own credit, and got it 100% funded and put money in my pocket. So you can see how you can get hooked on real estate pretty quickly by doing that, and that's exactly how I structured my deals. I get bank financing, I raise private money now for the down payment, and then I sometimes will take an acquisition fee, sometimes I don't. We'll refinance, take some money off the table, distribute the proceeds to all the different partners, and then hold on to that property long term for positive cash flow and principal pay down. That's the beauty of this. So I would look at that as well. And then the third thing that I would do is probably find somebody who's out there doing deals, who's already confident and comfortable and has access to capital. And I would say, hey, you put up the money, let me go do the work, and then just give me a percentage of the equity in the deal. That's going to give you enough confidence, and that way you can learn on somebody else's dime, right? Instead of learning on your own. They're not going to let you fumble. They're not going to let you fail anyways, because they're not going to let their money be put at risk. So it allows you, though, to then link arms with somebody who has access to the money, but maybe doesn't have the knowledge or the time or the bandwidth to take on another deal, but maybe they lend you the deal. You kick them 50% of the ownership or 70% of the owner. It doesn't matter. Go and get the experience and take down the first deal. Once you take down the first deal, now you have the ultimate testimonial. If I did it once, I can do it again. Here's one on my vacation rental one. If you're not familiar, I have some vacation rental properties, kind of lifestyle type properties. And I have some very unique ones in North Carolina, and South Carolina, on an island even for that. And I bought some like track homes down in Florida outside of Disney World. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are like recession-proof homes. Like Disney's always going to be around. About 18 months later, COVID hits and completely wipes out Disney and all sorts of. But the properties had an issue before that. You can go and watch this video on my Florida vacation rentals and the lessons that I learned from that. So check that one out. But the question here is, what percent do you usually pay a company for running the costs and running management, cleaning the property, bookings, all that kind of stuff in these vacation rental properties? Is it about 10%? In traditional rentals, you can expect to pay around a 10% management fee. And it's going to depend on your market and how many units you have with them, and maybe you can negotiate it down, or if you're in a certain market where the rents are way higher, maybe it's a little bit less. So that's in a traditional annual lease. The vacation rentals are a little bit different though. There's a lot more management that goes into these, but they also make more money. But most short-term rental companies will charge somewhere between 15 to, I've seen up to 30% management fee. A lot of them are in that 20 to 25% range is pretty typical. 25% is pretty standard actually. You're paying a lot more. Realize it is more time on an effort on their part, but they're also getting paid. It's a really good game to be in if you have good systems in place. You can really make some margin if you own a short-term rental management company. But they're taking care of everything. They're handling all the reservations, a lot of phone calls on some of these, especially the higher end upscale ones. They're taking the bookings, they're handling all the accounting, they're sending you the bookkeeping and the reports at the end of the month, collecting the money, paying out all the bills, vendors lining up, exterminators lining up landscaping, lining up pool or hot tub upkeep, lining up the cleaning people to come in as soon as somebody leaves and gets it ready for somebody to come back in that night. There's a lot of logistics that come into that. They might be meeting for furniture delivery, putting the furniture together. It could be like legit anything, and they handle all of it. So just understand what the property management agreement looks like and see what kind of other fees they charge. Some charge a management fee plus a whole bunch of other fees on top of that can really start hurting and nickel and diming the operation. Other ones just charge a straight management fee. So just get a copy of it. and get a copy of their property management agreement and get a copy of their fee schedule, and then you can align and compare apples to apples instead of just going off of the percentage that they charge. All right, and the last question we got here is on another Spill the Beans episode, and the question is, does depreciation write-off go in your pocket as cash? Depreciation is one of those things that is like, I don't know, it should be one of the wonders of the world. It's amazing, and it's incredible that it even exists, but it's not like cash in your pocket. If you got $100,000 of depreciation on a deal, no, you don't get cash and put it in your pocket. In fact, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna record a video all about depreciation, some of the benefits of depreciation, what to look for in that. We'll even talk about cost segregation studies, how to accelerate depreciation and front-end load some of that, so that way it really limits your tax liability, and how that can offset some of your earned income if you're in the right grouping as a certain professional in this industry. So check out that video. I'll do that one next, and we will link to this, link to that video in this video. But that'll really open up your eyes to depreciation. So good question though. All of those were fantastic questions. Appreciate you guys putting things in the comment section. I love seeing your takeaways from these videos, and I love hearing your questions because it makes my job easier to, you know, answer that. Like I try to come up with content for you guys that I think would be pertinent and eye-opening in this industry, and at the same time, there's some things that I gloss over and I don't even think about answering some of these things. So I love hearing your questions. Put more questions in the comments of any of the videos, and when we accumulate another half dozen questions or so, I'll do another video answering your guys' questions, and hopefully it helps you go take down some properties of your own and start making some money and building some wealth. So appreciate you guys being here. If there's anything that I can do, don't hesitate to reach out. And again, if you would, share this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the little notifications bell, because we're trying to drop these a couple times a week. And if you got value out of this, please share it with somebody else who you think might get some value out of it too. And until next time, be your best.